All right, let's get started here on a Wednesday night. No time like the present for this week's Panther-Lair Show. Back where it all started. And this is really where it began for us on this YouTube channel, doing these weekly live shows. Did them on Tuesday for a while, do them on Wednesdays now. Sometimes got to move them to Tuesdays. Sometimes got to change the schedules around. But we're here on Wednesday night, September 21st. For the live Panther-Lair Show, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Subscribe to that YouTube channel to stay up to date on all of our latest exclusive Pitt video content. You hit that subscribe button, it's right on the screen. It's kind of, I think that little blue rectangle, the subscribe button, is kind of buried there in the yellow .com. That's kind of where it shows up. So move your mouse around that area. Click assuming you're watching on a laptop. I don't know where it shows up or what it looks like on the on your phone, but click to subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Turn on notifications. You always get an alert sent right to your phone whenever we go live. And that way you can never miss anything. You know what I mean? We do these live shows on Wednesday nights, as longtime viewers will tell you. It's scheduled for 8:30. Sometimes starts at 8:31 or 32. You never really know when it's going to start. It's generally around 8:30. But then we also do the live post-game shows, the Panther-Lair post-game, which we did after each of the first 3 games so far. And we'll do, including the West Virginia game. We did that one at like 1:30 in the morning. And we'll do one this week after the Rhode Island game. Probably around 8 or 8:30 is when we'll get started for that post-game show. I don't have an exact time yet, but if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you turn on notifications, you'll get an alert sent right to your phone so you know when we go live. There won't be any issues. You won't miss anything. You won't have any uncertainty because you'll get a notification sent to you. And so if you're like, wow, when are they going live? What's happening? When is Chris going live? That's the way you can find out. So subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and get those notifications. Of course, like this video and stay tuned on Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. And of course, message boards where you can talk to hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans, hang out with other Pitt fans all day, every day. I mean, it's an ongoing Pitt conversation. It's like if you're sitting there, you're thinking, I got a thought about Pitt, or I want to talk to somebody about Pitt stuff. It's just like a non-stop 24-hour a day, 7-day a week conversation that's going on that you can just enter and leave as you see fit. And you pop in and say, hey, what are people talking about today? Oh, that's interesting. Or you have something to say. You're like, hey, I want to talk about how wild it is that they had Pitt had Henry Parrish and Israel Abanikanda committed at the same time in that summer of 2019, I guess, that they were both committed to Pitt at the same time. Now they're 2 of the 3 leaders in the ACC in rushing. There's 3 guys tied with 302 rushing yards so far this season at the top of the ACC. It's Israel Abanikanda, it's Henry Parrish, and it's Treshaun Ward from Florida State. Kind of weird. It's weird how that ended up. Of course, Henry Parrish didn't, he decommitted from Pitt and signed with Ole Miss and went there for a year or two. Now he's at Miami, and so Pitt will face him in the regular season finale. And to kind of see where he stacks up. But if you had that thought crosses your mind, you're just sitting there one day, you're at work or whatever, you think, boy, it's weird that Abanikanda and Parrish were both committed to Pitt at the same time, and Jordan Addison, for that matter. I'm going to go post about it on Panther-Lair. I want to talk to somebody about that. So you make a post on Panther-Lair.com, and you'll get replies, and you'll get into a conversation. So, I mean, if you're a Pitt fan looking for the best online community of Pitt fans, that's I don't think you can do better than that. And there's been lots of conversation on the boards all week in the wake of the win at Western Michigan, heading into this game against Rhode Island. And this is there are certain, I don't think you would call it turning points, but there are certain benchmarks and points in the schedule that you pass where it's almost sort of before and after moment. And the schedules don't always set up like this. 2018, 2019, 2017 for that matter. Actually, 2016, they played ACC games in September. And come to think about it, I think 2015, I think they had an ACC game in September as well. And these last 2 seasons, they managed to get all non-conference games in the first 4 weeks of the season. So September has really just been non-conference games. Last year they went, UMass, Tennessee, Western Michigan, New Hampshire. This year, of course, West Virginia, Tennessee, Western Michigan, and Rhode Island. And so it's really, these were the first 2 years in Pat Narduzzi's time that he, time at Pitt, that he was able to stack the schedule like that, to just do all non-conference games and then jump into the conference schedule. Now, a lot of those years, 2018, 2015, part of the reason that there was a part of the reason there was a conference game in September is because they had Notre Dame on the schedule. Notre Dame was typically scheduled for like November or October, somewhere around there. And so you put the Notre Dame game at that point on the schedule, you're going to bump one of those conference games back into the early portion. So I think in 18 they played North Carolina in September. I forget who they played in September in 2015. They had Youngstown State. They played Akron and Iowa. Must have played someone else. Maybe Virginia Tech. Maybe they played Virginia Tech, and because they had a really good stretch there, like 4 games in a row where they played like Virginia Tech, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and won them all. And I think the last 2, Georgia Tech and Syracuse, were won on like long field goals. Virginia was was a defensive battle. Virginia Tech too. But anyway, they had conference games in September. I have to think coaches like doing it this way, and then you just get into. You could call it the grind, or you could just the ACC schedule, the real games, the games that really matter and are ultimately going to determine your fate. I mean, 4 teams make the playoffs, right? That's 127 other FBS teams, or even if you want to go just Power 5, that's another 61 Power 5 teams that aren't going to make the playoffs. And so the games that ultimately matter the most to them are going to be those conference games. I know the SEC likes to backlog or throw their FCS game in the next to last week of the season as kind of a warm-up. Or a rest period, I guess, is a better way to put it. It's not a warm-up. It's a rest period before they get to the regular season finale and then head for the postseason. But I like the split. I like knowing that Pitt is going to play Rhode Island on Saturday. And when that game is over, it's just conference games from there on out. It's just all ACC games. It's all those games against teams that you know and that you've seen. It's teams you're familiar with, and it's the games that matter. I'd much prefer this to having, 4 or 5 ACC games, or 3 ACC games, and then like a Notre Dame or a Navy or something random like that, and then 4, ACC games after that. I'm not really into that. I don't like having an ACC game in September. These are ultimately the games that matter the most. You might as well get as much warm-up time as you can so that when you actually dive into the conference games, you hit the ground running. I can't imagine that Pat Narduzzi, or who would it have been in 2019, who was Bronco Mendenhall, I can't imagine that either one of those guys liked opening the season against each other. I can't imagine that Louisville and Syracuse were all that thrilled about opening against each other this year. It's just playing a conference game in the opener. It's just not ideal because for the most part, teams aren't really ready to hit the ground rolling there. I mean, you can even look last year. What was the Georgia-Clemson game was an opener, right? Was that the Chick-fil-A kickoff game or whatever it was? It was like a 10-3 game. Did Clemson and Georgia Tech really enjoy playing on that Monday night? I mean, sure, it's a cool stage and you're playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but is that really what you want to do to open the season? Or do you want to have, UMass, or Albany or something like that? Quite frankly, Pitt, West Virginia in the season opener wasn't really an ideal scenario because neither team was, both teams, they were fresh health-wise, but they weren't really in the rhythm and the routine of the season yet. I like this because now Pitt's had 3 unique tests and unique challenges, each unique in its own way and each challenging in its own way. And then they get this game against Rhode Island, and then it's October, it's ACC, and it's 8 games in a row that really matter and really count and are really going to determine what this season is and what this season can be. And so we're coming up on that point, that benchmark point, that before and after moment where the season itself is really going to take shape. This feels like the preseason, and these non-conference games feel like the preseason, even though they matter very much. And obviously it was very important to beat West Virginia. It was a real disappointment to lose to Tennessee. And it was an absolute bounce back to go out to Western Michigan and do what they did, led by that guy on the screen right there, Nate Yarnell. Couldn't have timed that much better. Because as we sit here on Wednesday, and we're 5 days removed, 4 days, whatever it is, removed from the game, I'm still really impressed with how Nate Yarnell played. And part of that is just due to going back over and looking at the passes he made again and kind of recapping that and taking another look at, how many good throws did he really make? How many bad throws did he make? And part of it is talking to the coaches and the players this week. Hearing Pat Narduzzi say that Nate Yarnell had 100% ability and opportunity to change plays at the line of scrimmage or make checks and calls at the line of scrimmage. Hearing Andre Powell, Pat Narduzzi said that on Monday. On Tuesday, Andre Powell said Nate Yarnell was 100% in his decision-making, made all the right calls, and really made good decisions, impressed the coaches with his confidence and his ability to operate the offense. And hearing that and talking to different players and different coaches, I think there was, I don't want to say surprise. I think the coaches were high on Nate Yarnell last summer when he first arrived. He arrived in January of 21. And through spring and through the summer, they were really impressed with how he played. They felt good about the prospects, of Yarnell being their quarterback of the future. And then he gets hurt and he misses time and he's not available in spring camp and he's finally back in August, but he's not, he's behind. He's behind as anyone would be who misses that kind of time and that kind of practice time. So, I think there was uncertainty. I don't think they knew what they were going to get. And I think they called plays like they didn't know what they were going to get. They designed the game plan and put together the offense for that game at Western Michigan as if they didn't know what they were going to get out of Nate Yarnell because, quite frankly, they didn't know what they were going to get out of Nate Yarnell. Putting a guy in for his first start, for his first significant playing time, is always going to be a bit of a crapshoot. Doing it on the road is even more, you're throwing more elements into it, more sort of variables and X factors. And then doing it when a guy hasn't played in a game in 3 years, you really don't know what you're going to get. And he's been working scout team prior to this past week, prior to the week leading up to the Western Michigan game. And so you have a guy who basically has a week of real practice under his belt, of game plan prep under his belt. And he goes out and acquitted himself nicely. Played really well. Played well enough that I think you're now looking at Nate Yarnell as a possible piece for the future. And you don't want to overreact to 12 passes, right? He threw 12 passes. That's it. He dropped back 14 times, threw 12 passes. He was sacked once, and he threw a 13th pass that actually was ruled a no play because of a defensive pass interference on a pass to Gavin Bartholomew that, quite frankly, wasn't very good. But he threw 12 passes. 9 of them were caught. 1 went for a touchdown. And for the most part, there's maybe out of those 12 passes, 3 or 4 that you would say that was a bad throw or a precarious throw or that's not the throw you want the quarterback to make. He threw to Gavin Bartholomew in the end zone on a play where he probably held on to the ball a little bit too long. I don't know if he was waiting for Bartholomew to get open, but if that's what he was waiting for, he needed to keep waiting or give up on that option because the ball was underthrown and almost intercepted. He had a throw to Izzy Benakanda that it wasn't a lateral. It was a forward pass. It was out to the flat, and it was a dangerous pass. It was the kind of thing, and people were sort of saying in the first half of, why isn't Nate Yarnell just have him throw some screens? Screens are great in theory, all right? And if you can execute them, they can be dynamite plays. But they're not the safe throws that people make them out to be, because if you make a mistake, if you don't see the defense right, if the defense reads the play and sees it coming, and if your throw is not perfect, and sometimes even if it is, if the defense has sort of sniffed it out, that's an easy 6 the other way, right? You throw that screen and it gets picked, there's nobody to stop you. There's nobody to stop the defender from going the other way. That's a dangerous kind of play. The safer throws are the throws in the flat, the throws, the wheel route throws to Gavin Bartholomew, those kinds of things, which they didn't really do all that much. Bartholomew ends up with, the one catch, the big catch, the 37-yard catch on a play action where, Western Michigan bit and Bartholomew was all by himself. And that's great. those are the kind of things you need to do. I think Yarnell was 5 of 5 when he ran play action and threw the ball in that game, according to Pro Football Focus. That's great. That's a tremendous, you'll take 5 out of 5, right? He had one other pass to Izzy Benakanda at the end of the first half where he took the snap and almost immediately he had to scramble to his right because Carter Wharton got beat off the left side. And Yarnell was sort of scrambling, running, and he ends up throwing what sort of looked like a screen, pass to Izzy Abanikanda because there were a bunch of offensive linemen around him. But the problem was there were also a bunch of defensive players around him too. It wasn't, if it was supposed to be a screen, it wasn't executed as such. I think that was an emergency, oh crap, throwaway pass. It just happened to throw it to Izzy Abanikanda right in the middle of like 8 other guys. And then the pass to Bub Means, I didn't initially want to put it in the bad pass category, but it was thrown at his shoelaces. Now, major credit to Bub Means for making a big-time catch on that play and making something out of a play that looked like it was going to be an incomplete pass at best. So real credit to Bub Means on that one. Nice work by him. Wasn't a great throw, but good work by Bub Means to make that. But then, the passes to Jared Wayne, not the fade pass. That was, the timing clearly wasn't there for the fade pattern in the end zone. That's something you have to work on probably for more than 1 week of practice to be able to really get the timing down, and him and Wayne didn't really have it. But his other passes to Jared Wayne were really good. Obviously, the pass to Gavin Bartholomew was a great read. He knew where he was going with the ball. He knew he was going to have that option. And the 3 passes to Konate Mumfield I thought were really good. I thought the touchdown pass was a really good throw, and it was a great catch by Mumfield. We actually have it on screen right now. That's perfect timing. I couldn't have done that better if I tried. And so on the whole, you're looking at 14 dropbacks, let's say 12 passes attempted, and maybe 3 or 4 bad or ill-advised throws. That's pretty good for a guy making his first career start, first playing time, and collegiate debut, and first game played in 3 years. That's pretty good. And it's hard to, I think probably the coaches were able to pick some things apart. I'm sure the coaches were able to, find some issues, and the coaches were able to, I'm sure there were plays where he didn't grade well. But on the whole, I don't know how you give him less than an A for that game. Game plan notwithstanding, opponent notwithstanding, all those things. I don't think you can give him less than an A. And what you start thinking about, and I know people were doing this on Saturday and through the weekend, and they've been doing it this week, is you start looking to the future now. And again, it's 12 passes thrown. It's 14 dropbacks. It's 1 game at Western Michigan on the 3rd week of the season in September. But when you look at what he was able to do in that game, in those circumstances, I think you checked a lot of boxes on what you hope a quarterback is able to do in terms of making reads, making calls, making checks, and making throws. And he did those things. He didn't turn the ball over. He got sacked once. He was 9 of 12 for 179 yards and a touchdown. It was a great stat line. That's a fantastic stat line. You double everything up, and he's 18 of 24 for 390 yards or something like that, or 350 yards, 360 yards. Okay, right? You absolutely take that. Only 2 touchdowns, but you follow my point. That's it was a hell of a debut, and you do start extrapolating a little bit and hypothesizing about what it might look like when he's got 2 weeks in the offense, or 4 weeks in the offense, or a year in the offense, that he comes back next fall, after a full spring and a full summer, and he's taking lots and lots of reps, the kind of reps that a starter or a backup would get. And you start thinking about the possibilities here. You say, Pitt might have their quarterback of the future. Now, I'm someone who said that Kenny Minchey is going to come in and be the starter next year, but that was mostly because I didn't think they had any better options on the roster. Sort of assuming Keaton Slovis is going to leave, and I don't know what Nick Patti will ultimately decide to do, but I sort of assumed that Kenny Minchey might come in and be the best option. But I didn't know what Nate Yarnell could do. And what we saw on Saturday night is that kid can play. Kid might be able to play a little bit. He might be the quarterback of the future. And then you start sort of building out the rest of the offense, right? Let's say Yarnell is kind of what he showed himself to be on Wednesday night, all right? So, you got your quarterback. Let's say Izzy Abanikanda keeps rolling. He's got 302 yards through 3 games. He should have no problem. You would assume at that pace he's going to clear the 1,000-yard plateau in this season, and I think if he gets 1,000 yards, I don't think he's coming back to college for his senior year. Let's assume he's gone, but Rodney Hammond will be back. So you got your quarterback and your running back. Konate Mumfield could actually kind of maybe, and I'm not entirely sure, but might be able to leave for the pros after this year if he's so inclined. I'm not saying that he's going to perform at that level, but I think even though he's a sophomore, I believe he graduated high school in 2020. And so that whole being 3 years removed from high school thing that Dion Lewis and LaShawn McCoy and Larry Fitzgerald did might be an option for Konate Mumfield should he choose to exercise it. That's down the road. Let's assume he's back. Let's assume Bub Means comes back. You got Jalen Barton back. You potentially could have Jared Wayne back. I don't know if you're going to, but you potentially could. Jaden Bradley will be back. Assuming these guys don't transfer and that kind of stuff. You've got Gavin Bartholomew back. And then all on the offensive line, Jake Cradle, who played center on Saturday night and I thought did well, has more eligibility left. He can come back as he's a redshirt senior now, but he could come back as a super senior next year, same as Blake Zabovic. Matt Gonsalves will be back. Branson Taylor will be here. Ryan Baer is another tackle option. Ryan Jacoby. You're going to have a bunch of experienced offensive linemen back. And all of a sudden, this offense looks like it could be pretty good. And maybe pick up where the 2022 offense leaves off. Wherever the 2022 offense ends up at the end of the season, that 2023 offense might be able to just pick up and go. Which I don't think I would have said prior to Saturday night. Just because there would have been a big question mark at quarterback. You don't know who it's going to be. You don't know how they're going to do. If it's Kenny Minchie coming in as a true freshman, there's going to be some growing pains that go with that. There's going to be a period of transition with that. If it's Nate Yarnell, maybe a little less transition. He'll have a year and a half in this offense. He'll have playing time in this offense. I think he needs to get on the field this weekend. I think he needs to play against Rhode Island and go out and kind of build on what he did at Western Michigan and have an opportunity to throw more and have more of the offense available to him. But he's gonna go into next season with more reps than he came into this season with. He's gonna go into next season with more reps than Kenny Minchie's gonna have, just by virtue of playing as much as he has already. So I think, and again, not to read too much into one Saturday night at Western Michigan, but I think you feel like you might have an answer at quarterback for the long term. Down the road type of option for a couple years now, which is, it changes your outlook, I think, on what 2023 and beyond can be. And again, I'm overreacting to one game, but I think you saw some sort of tangible things, some things that actually could be real and built upon in the way that Nate Yarnell played on Saturday night. And I was impressed. I haven't really found anyone who's not, who wasn't impressed by Nate Yarnell. I haven't found anyone who was not encouraged by how he performed. I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't really found too many yet because it was just a good, solid performance and really good given the circumstances. Really good. All right. I know a lot of people are coming in on the chat screen. We got a lot of... we got super chatters lining up already. We got lots of comments and questions. Listen, if you want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered, you can be a super chatter. You can hit that little $sign down at the bottom of the chat screen right there, and you can contribute a couple dollars to the podcast. We appreciate that support, and we'll make sure we get to your comment and question. I do want to mention our friend Chris Gates again. We've talked about him on the last couple of podcasts. Chris Gates at Chris Gates Fitness. He's a huge Pitt fan. First of all, this is the thing you need to know about Chris Gates. He's a huge Pitt fan, and he has been for a long time. I have a photo. I didn't take it. Somebody in the stands, I think it was the great Mike Tam, took this photo at the CBI tournament back in like 2012 or whatever it was. And it's classic because it shows up on my Facebook every year or on the anniversary of the CBI tournament because someone else took it and tagged me in the photo. And it's a photo of the old media section at the Peterson Events Center where we used to sit, kind of like at courtside, 4 or 5 levels at courtside. And, I'm sitting there and like I was tagged in and a couple other people. And it's just great to look through the faces of the media covering the CBI because we all have unique expressions, conveying a lot of different emotions of the experience of covering the CBI. And there in one of the rows is the great Jeff Hathorn, one of the best people in Pittsburgh sports media, sitting and sharing a laugh with Chris Gates, who had a career shift and I think found his calling with Chris Gates Fitness. If you don't know what Chris does, he's an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh, and he works with people all over the world to help build muscle and burn fat and just improve health through fitness and nutrition. It doesn't just have to be necessarily about being, getting swole or thin or something. It's just healthy living and fitness and nutrition. And so what he does, he guides and supports his clients every step of the way. So you show up, you put in the work, and you have confidence that what you're doing is working. And like I said, he's a huge Pitt fan, and every football season he gets feedback from Pitt fans, and I could share this given what I eat on Sunday. I don't eat as bad during Pitt games, but during the Steeler games on Sundays, it's a spread and it's not necessarily healthy. And Chris hears it every football season from people about how hard it is to stay sort of consistent with working out and eating right when there's tailgates every weekend and games to watch at home every weekend and beers and wings and all those things. We're all in that boat, right? So if it sounds familiar, Chris can help you. I mean, he lives this lifestyle too. I mean, he's a big Pitt fan and big sports fan. So he knows what it's like, and he knows how you can work through it and still achieve your goals. So, if that sounds like you, somebody who wants to sort of live a healthy lifestyle, but you're kind of running into those fall struggles, Chris can help you navigate the fall football season. Go to chrisgatesfitness.com. Chris Gates, just like it sounds, Chris, C-H-R-I-S, Gates, G-A-T-E-S, chrisgatesfitness.com. You can learn more about his online fitness coaching. And if you mention Panther-Lair, when you apply, you get 75% off your first month of coaching. Healthy lifestyle, fitness, nutrition, and surviving some of those more, or not surviving, but making it through some of those more dangerous temptations of fall. Chris can help you with all of that. He was even out in Kalamazoo. He went to the Western Michigan game. That's how dedicated a Pitt fan he is. So if you're looking for someone who can help with that kind of thing and you want to support another Pitt fan, chrisgatesfitness.com. Go check him out, chrisgatesfitness.com. All right, super chatters are already jumping in, a lot of them already, and I appreciate you. Joe New says, Chris, I guess he means Chris Peak. Maybe he means Chris Gates. I don't know what that's Chris Gates if he agrees with this, but Joe New says that Chris wants Izzy and Slovis to have milk, cookies, and a nap at halftime. Dews shot that down. Yeah, he did. So I asked Pat Narduzzi if he would consider resting Izzy Abanikanda during a meaningless FCS game in order to rest him up and have him prepared for the ACC games after he just got more carries over the last 2 weeks than at any 4-game stretch in his career. You realize that? So Izzy Abanikanda, 56 carries and 56 carries, 2 receptions, and I think 5 kick returns in the last 2 games. So 63 touches, right? 56 plus 2 plus 5. 63 touches in the last 2 games. You have to go to a 4-game stretch last season to find the only other time he had 60 plus touches in a stretch. You cannot find another 2-game stretch with 60 plus touches for Izzy Abanikanda. It's 4 games, and he had 61 touches over some stretch around the New Hampshire game. I think it was maybe Western Michigan, New Hampshire, whatever came after that, something like that. He's never had this kind of workload. It's not ridiculous to say, take it easy. James Conner, when they played Delaware in 2014, I think it was the season opener, James Conner played maybe 5 series, I think. Now, he rushed for 150 yards on 14 carries and scored 4 touchdowns. And maybe if Izzy Abanikanda scores 4 touchdowns on 5 series and rushes for 150 yards, they'll take him out as well. I don't see the need to risk it, particularly when you saw that Vincent Davis and Sebo Flemister can do the job. They could do it at Western Michigan. I'm pretty sure they can do it at home against Rhode Island. Those guys ran well. Davis and Flemister ran well against Western Michigan. Let them carry the ball against Rhode Island. You'll let them do the work. All right. And if you want to play Izzy for the first quarter, all right, fine. I don't see any need to push it. I don't see any need to get him extra snaps in this game or extra touches. And I know that, I predicted before the season that he would lead the ACC in rushing, and by following my suggestion, that's going to hurt the prediction because the Rhode Island game is a great opportunity for Izzy to rack up a lot of yards, or at least it should be that kind of opportunity. I think he's too valuable to this team, particularly with Rodney Hammond out. He's too valuable to this team even with Hammond on the team or active and available. He's just too important to put any extra wear on the tires, take any extra hits, any extra contact against Rhode Island with 8 ACC games staring you right down the barrel here. And the same thing with Keaton Slovis. I don't see a need to play him extensively. I think you gain a whole lot by playing Nate Yarnell in this game. You help get Yarnell more comfortable on the field, and you give Slovis extra time to get right so he can be ready for those games. But yeah, you're right. Pat Narduzzi disagreed, and I guess those guys will play. I guess those guys will play as much as the coaches want them to play. Mark Thurkel says, do you have any inside info on the injuries? Even if you can't be specific, can you at least let us know whether there's a general reason to be concerned? I don't know how many specifics I really know, to be honest. I put a post on the message board earlier this week with some thoughts on injuries. I mean, I believe Pat Narduzzi when he says nobody's out for the season. I believe him. He has often said he will tell us if anyone is out for the season. That has sometimes been true and sometimes not. On both sides of it. I famously remember him telling us Elijah Zeiss was out for the season. I think it was in 2015, only for Zeiss to return, and or maybe it was 2016. I forget which year it was. Only for Zeiss to ultimately return and play in the bowl game. So, and then there have been times when a player has clearly been out for the season and Narduzzi didn't say it. So, I believe him, but I also know there are examples that run counter to that. That said, I don't think any of the current injuries necessarily are season-ending. I think there are guys who are going to be out for a while, a few more weeks or a month or maybe more. I don't expect to see Rodney Hammond in the next few weeks. I don't expect to see Owen Drexel. Devin Danielson, I'm not sure about, but he didn't travel, and that's not a good sign. Dayon Hayes didn't travel to Western Michigan. I don't think he's going to be around for a little while. I do think he's going to have a chance to play later this season, but I don't think it's not going to be anytime soon. I think he's going to be out for a month or so. And then some of the other guys, I don't know. I mean, like Marquez Williams, I think will be fine. He came in and talked to us this week. He left that Western Michigan game with an injury. He didn't play in the second half. He came in and talked to the media this week, so I think he's going to be okay. I'm guessing Habo Baldonado will be okay. Not so sure about Nate Temple as far as guys who left the game due to injury. And then you have like Gabe Hoy and Deslin Alexandra who have dressed. Two different situations. I mean, Gabe Hoy has not played in any game this season. Alexandra was hurt in the West Virginia game. Both of those guys made the trip to Western Michigan. So I mean that's and were listed on the travel roster, so they were ostensibly available. That would seem to bode well for the prospect of them coming back sometime soon. If you are going to bring them back, I mean, that would probably be a guy like Gabe Hoy, who hasn't played at all this season, would probably be a guy that I would want to put out there on Saturday against Rhode Island, just to get him back into the flow of being on the field. He's a 6-year senior. I mean, he's been around a long time, so it's not like it's totally new to him, but he hasn't been on the field in a long time. He hasn't played, I guess since the Peach Bowl, right? So probably want to get him some work. Deslin Alexandra, if he's ready, if he feels good, then he can play. If not, you can hold him for the ACC game. But you do need some defensive ends. By the end of that game on Saturday night, they were down to like John Morgan, Bam Brema, Chris Maloney, and Nikai Johnson, and those were the 4 defensive ends by the end of the game. After they, didn't have Alexandra available, didn't have Hayes even in the state of Michigan, and lost Baldonado and Temple in the middle of the game. So you do want to get Deslin Alexandra back when you can. It just depends on when he's going to be, ready to play. So that's about as specific as I can get, both with, Pitt's injury policies and just with what, kind of information we actually have. Jack, I apologize if I messed this up, Jack, but Jack Bertolami says, hey, Chris, after last week, who do you think is more important to the team, Keaton or Izzy? I feel like Izzy has that dog in him. I think he does. He's got that x-ray. of with the dog. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, who's more important to the team, Izzy or Keaton Slovis? I mean, if Rodney Hammond is healthy, then that neutralizes Abanikanda a little bit in terms of value, because those guys are both really good running backs and both really valuable to the team. So that would put Slovis at number one. Without Hammond, boy, it's tough. I mean, I was really encouraged by how Nate Yarnell played, but I think, I mean, you look at Keaton Slovis throwing for 500 yards in 6 quarters before he got hurt against Tennessee. I think is playing well and played well, and is going to come back and play well. And the quarterback is just so valuable. And even though I was encouraged by Nate Yarnell against Western Michigan, if you told me I could only have, from the current roster as it stands, without Rodney Hammond available for a while, if I could only have Slovis or Abanikanda going into ACC play, I'm probably taking Slovis. I'm probably still going with the quarterback. I'll get what I can out of Vincent Davis and Sebo Flemister and maybe Daniel Carter. I'll try to bide my time until Rodney Hammond returns. But I want my top quarterback out there. I want my quarterback one, my QB1, as they like to say. I want him out there. So, I mean, I'm still kind of leaning toward that, but I don't disagree that Izzy Abanikanda does, in fact, have that dog in him. Joe Sherry is a super chatter. Joe, I don't know if you have a comment somewhere in here. If I see it. Oh, there it is. Why did Pat Narduzzi need to motivate the offensive line at halftime? Isn't that Dave Borbely's job? They have played way below their talent level. I think Borbely should be let go. It's tough. It's tough because that group has not performed at the level that they were expected to perform. They haven't performed at the level that Pitt needed them to perform. Pitt needed the offensive line to really kind of lead the way and be the foundation of this team in 2022. And that hasn't been the case. I mean, those guys have not played up to, I think, their own expectations and the expectations of everyone around, the coaches and fans and, media. I mean, like, I'll be the first to say it. I spent all offseason talking about how good this offensive line was going to be because they had 4 6-year seniors or 3 6-year seniors and 2 redshirt seniors, or 4 6-year seniors and a couple of 5th-year seniors and all this, the 4th-year junior and all this stuff. I spent all this time talking about it all offseason because I thought it was going to be legit. I thought they were going to be really good. And they have just, I think they've shown signs. I think they've gotten better. But I think overall they've been a disappointment, and not without the potential to improve. I think there is still talent in that group, and for whatever reason, they're just not playing up to their level. But, like I said about the one pass that Nate Yarnell threw to Izzy Abanikanda at the Western Michigan game that looked like it was a screen, just because it was an emergency check down pass. Yarnell's under pressure almost immediately. Just total whiff by Carter Warren. And there are plays like that I feel like you can look at in most games. We just say, what's the offensive line doing here? Why are they not more successful? Why have they not been more effective? When they did a pretty good job protecting Kenny Pickett last year. And I don't think, there's so often the retort there is, well, Pickett made that O-line look better than they were. Pickett's mobility kept the sack numbers down. Pickett's mobility covered for a lot of shortcomings on the offensive line. And yes and no. There are plays that Kenny Pickett made, and they were great plays. And even though there was pressure, he was able to avoid it, and he did a great job. But at the same time, there are a whole lot of plays that I think back on. It is a lasting image in my memory of Kenny Pickett just dropping back and looking like he could probably stand there for 3 or 4 minutes, where he just drops back and has all kinds of time, a perfectly clean pocket, and he picks defenses apart. So, I think the offensive line did block well for Pickett last year. I think he made a lot of plays with his legs. I don't think there's any question about that. But they did block well for him. And I don't know if it's a change in scheme, if it's a change in offense, if Borbely changed something, if Signetti changed something. I don't know what it is. But it's not as good. They haven't been as good this year as they were in years past. And that's, specifically last year. And that has been a problem. And they're going to have to find whatever answers there are to find, they're going to have to find them starting next week. I mean, they're going to have to find them for the ACC games because this team, I think, has a ton of potential. This is something else I've been sort of dwelling on this week is that, when you put Slovis back on this team, with the way Abanakenda's playing, I think Konate Mumfield is sort of really settling in now. I think he had a really good game at Western Michigan. I think he's going to settle in and maybe blow up here for a few games in a row in the ACC. I think, Gavin Bartholomew is getting more usage. I think, I maybe that shoestring catch could be a real catalyst for Bub Means. I think things are heading in a certain direction with this team and with this offense where I think they can be pretty good. But they need the offensive line. The offensive line has to be a key component in the positive side, and it hasn't been thus far. Mark Doyle. Where's your comment, Mark? I saw it. How fast is Gavin Bartholomew? He often gets wide open. I was just wondering about his pro potential. I think, I don't know his speed. I don't know his 40 time or anything like that. But he obviously looks like he can run. For a tight end, he can move pretty well. He can keep it. He can keep it moving. So, I think he's a good athlete. I think obviously he's a good athlete. You saw him jump over a guy in the Tennessee game, and then we've seen him run away from defenders. He's not gonna win a foot race against a lot of corners or safeties, but he doesn't need to. That's not what he's going to be asked to do. He's going to be asked to catch passes in the flat and occasionally go down the seam. And he's good at those things. Really good at those things. Joe New chimes in as a two-time super chatter on this one. He says, Haba Baldonado is fine. He came out of the tent smiling. They took away his helmet so he wouldn't ask. You know that if you were there. My trip from Boston was less than $500 total. Well, I'm glad you... I'm glad it didn't cost much for you to fly from Boston. I'm glad that you were close enough to the field to see Haba Baldonado smiling. I was just running down the list of guys who either didn't travel for the game, who left the game due to injury, or traveled and didn't play. And since Haba Baldonado was a guy who left the game due to injury, I figured I would include him on that list. And yeah, I saw him on TV smiling. Unfortunately, and maybe doctors in Boston kind of work this way where they, if you come into the hospital, let's say you get hit by a car, but they bring you into the hospital, or you get shot and they bring you into the hospital and you're smiling, they say, well, he's fine. He's smiling. There's no problem there. I do think Baldonado will be fine. The fact that he was smiling when he came out of the tent, it doesn't mean anything. It just means that he maybe heard a good joke. Let's see. Let's run through the rest of these comments here. Ed Mahoney says, good evening, Chris. Any news on the quarterback situation? Rest the injured players and start at the redshirt freshman again. I think so, but not everyone agrees. There are actually some other comments about how Pitt should not do that, and that was a bad idea. Dominic Kern says, did they announce the time for the Georgia Tech game? No, that's on what they call a 6-day hold, Dominic. And so we'll probably find that out on Sunday, I think. Sunday, maybe Monday, but I think Sunday will probably be the day we get a start time there. G Money says, did the freshman D lineman from Hempfield get hurt? I heard he looked like a player, need bodies. Freshman D lineman from Hempfield or Hempfield? I'm not sure what you're talking about. You're talking about Sean Fitzsimmons, defensive tackle from Central Valley from Monaca. I'm not sure who you're talking about. That's who you're talking about. I don't think he got hurt. I do think Sam Okunlola, the defensive tackle from, I guess, Massachusetts or somewhere, I think he has been injured and hasn't been dressing for the games. But Sean Fitzsimmons, I think, is dressed, if that's who you're asking about. Justin Bozeman says, Nate Yarnell is a player. The more he plays, the better he will get. He can be a key cog after Slovis is gone, as long as he keeps developing. I think so, too. I think you really... I guess you can't assume that he'll continue to develop and get better at reading the defenses and get better at playing. But he certainly, seemed to have all the tools you would want. I was really impressed. I didn't think he would be able to play the way he played, even in a limited sample size with a limited playbook. I did not think he would be able to play like that. But he did, and he was really impressive. Alan Olive says Pitt suffered a lot of injuries to its starters on both sides of the ball and a bad kicking game, blocked punt, missed field goals, and the season hasn't started yet. Should have played lesser opponents with Duke and Syracuse picking up their game. Should have played lesser opponents. Well, so I mean, really, your two challenging opponents were West Virginia and Tennessee. Do you really want to drop the backyard brawl? I don't. You know what I mean? I would want to keep. I want to keep the backyard brawl in place because it's a great series and it's a game that should be played every year. Do you want to have Tennessee and West Virginia in the same year? Probably not. You know, that's some unfortunate scheduling, but I'm guessing it's just how it worked out that West Virginia could fit in, you know? How it worked out that Tennessee could fit in the schedule. Every now and then you're going to have that. We're going to play multiple Power 5 teams in the same year. It's just going to happen. You prefer not to do it all the time. You prefer to make it a rarity, but it's going to happen from time to time, and that's sort of inevitable. Just with the way scheduled, and you want to have some marquee games every now and then. The other problem that Pitt runs into, and this doesn't necessarily affect it this year, but it affects some upcoming seasons, is the arrangement with Notre Dame, where the ACC basically gives, you know, its conference teams games against Notre Dame, and you know when those are scheduled, but they're sort of sporadically spread out, and you can't. You know, I mean, you're trying to schedule your other non-conference series around that, and you're going to end up inevitably with overlap. And so they end up in 2018 playing Notre Dame, Penn State, and Central Florida. Now, they didn't know Central Florida was going to be a top 10 team or whatever, the top 15 or top 10 team, whatever they were at that time. But they did, you know, they still end up with Penn State and Notre Dame in the same year, even though the Penn State series was, I think that was announced in 2011, before Pitt was even in the ACC. So you'd like to avoid it. Some things are going to be out of your control, like the Notre Dame series, and sometimes it's just that's how it's going to work out. That if you want to get this series and you want to get that series, you're going to have a year of overlap between them. That's what they end up with here, a year of overlap between West Virginia and Tennessee. Scroll down. Peninsula P says, add Hakeem Williams to that projection. I think he's talking about when I was projecting the offense next season. I was projecting the receivers and all the different players they could have on offense. And he says, add Hakeem Williams. Of course, that's the 5-star wide receiver we've been talking about for a long time. He's going to announce his commitment on Friday. And at this point, I don't think Pitt's going to get him. I think Florida State is the likely option. I think Florida State's where he's going to end up committing. I think Pitt made a valiant effort. I think a lot of credit goes to Taekwon Underwood and Charlie Partridge and Pat Narduzzi for getting Pitt this deep with a 5-star prospect who's one of the top 5 receivers in the country in the class of 2023. But ultimately, I think they're going to lose out to Florida State here. Now, keep an eye out for I posted on the message board about some other guys that they might get, and actually I'm going to talk about it on tomorrow morning's Morning Pit. So if you're not following the Morning Pit, those come out every morning, Monday through Friday. It's the Morning Pit. It's 15, 20, 25 minutes, half hour, however long it takes to talk about whatever's going on in the world of Pitt sports. We release it right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And it just comes out every morning. It's a little morning update, I guess, in Pitt sports. And so I'm going to talk a lot about recruiting on tomorrow's Morning Pit, on the Thursday Morning Pit. So tune into that, and you can hear my thoughts on Hakeem and some other guys to keep an eye on. Royce Beacom says, should there be offensive plays from the past in this year's offense? Consider Israel Banacanda in the Wildcat or one of the receivers in a jet sweep. How about the many bubble screens Whipple employed? All those bubble screens that everyone complained about all the time. The receivers in the jet sweep, I feel like, has never really been an effective play for Pitt since 2016. Matt Canada was able to make it work. We haven't really seen anybody make it work effectively since then or consistently, aside from maybe one off here or there. The Wildcat, you know, Mark Whipple had that in. It's possible. To me, I think you want to hone in on the offense that Frank Cignetti wants to run and really kind of master what that offense is trying to do and what it's trying to look like. I think that needs to be the focus. Before you start getting into Wildcats and things like that, just get good at this offense. You know what I mean? And take the time it takes, take whatever time it takes to master this offense. Alan Olive said this offense is as boring as Pat. I'm sure he's finally happy. I'm pretty sure he was happy last year when they went 11-3 and won the ACC and had a Heisman Trophy finalist and a Biletnikoff Award winner and the highest scoring, most productive offense in school history. I think Pat Narduzzi was pretty happy with that. I don't think he was complaining too much about that, but I could be wrong. Oh, and also this boring offense, as you say, the quarterback had 500 yards through the first 6 quarters before he got hurt. Now, was the offense boring on Saturday night? Yeah, it was. Was that the intention? Yeah, it was. Was that probably the smartest play? Yeah, it was. And if they had Nate Yarnell dropping back to pass 35 times, you'd be on here talking about how Narduzzi and Cignetti are idiots and why are they making this redshirt freshman who hasn't played a game in 3 years drop back to pass all those times. Come on. We're talking about how boring the offense is. The boring offense is not why they lost to Tennessee. 2 missed field goals, multiple drop passes are why they lost to Tennessee. Not the boring offense. And the boring offense beat West Virginia, admittedly with some help from the defensive backs. And the boring offense took care of business against Western Michigan and was creative enough and interesting enough to have a redshirt freshman go 9 of 12 for $179 and a touchdown. Boring offense. Get out of here. G-Money says, where's the best pizza place in Western PA? I think you're actually asking me that. I really like Slice on Broadway in Beachview, but that's just me. Anthony Tennyson says, Chris, that's soft talk about resting players. People are getting too soft now. It's only 12 games. Let the guys play. There was no talking like this 5 to 10 years ago. I mean, I guess. I don't know. I mean, was it maybe? Let me think. 5 to 10 years ago. Well, 2014, like I said, James Conner didn't even play in the second half against Delaware. 2019, when they played Delaware again, the week after the Central Florida game, this was only 3 years ago, but the week after the Central Florida game, Kenny Pickett and A.J. Davis and Vincent Davis, I think, didn't play. Probably a few other guys because they were hurt and trying to rehab after the UCF game to get ready for the conference schedule, or the bulk of the conference schedule. Let me think. Can't think of any other examples off the top of my head. Look, it's not. I know it's only 12 games. Let the guys play. But Tony, what I'm saying to you is, why take the unnecessary risk? You know what I mean? Like, why take an unnecessary risk? You should be able to beat Rhode Island comfortably with Nate Yarnell and Vincent Davis and Sebo Flemister. You know, you should be able to beat Rhode Island comfortably with no more than 1/4 of Izzy Abanikanda and Keaton Slovis. It's not about being soft. It's not about only playing. It's not only. It's not about only playing 12 games or any nonsense like that. It's just about playing the smart game, being smart, and trying to build. For the games that matter to really achieve at the level you want to achieve this season. Alan Olive is really going off here in the comments section about I don't even know what. Let's see. I don't even know what Alan Olive is really taking over the comment section. I don't really know what he has to say. He's just sort of going on. But Alan, keep saying your thing, man. I don't know what all your thoughts and comments are about, but this game against Rhode Island, and it's no disrespect to Rhode Island. I mean, I think they've been a successful FCS team in the past. They're a team, and they're guys that are going to go out and play football, and they're going to try and give you a good game, and certainly FCS teams have beat FBS teams. This is not, we're well past the point of thinking it's just an automatic win, an assumed win. But I think on a talent level, Pitt is good enough that they should be able to beat Rhode Island comfortably, and they should be able to do it in such a fashion that they don't need to play their starters the whole game. On the morning Pitt today, earlier this morning, today's morning Pitt, I talked about 6 guys that I'm really interested in seeing, that I really want to see them get opportunities and play and have some success in this game. Like Jalen Barden. I want to see Jalen Barden go off. I want to see Jalen Barden make some big catches. I want to see Carter Johnson get a few targets. I want to see Carter Johnson get the ball thrown to him. And I want to see Nate Yarnell play more to see if he can build on what he did at Western Michigan and keep it going and, really show more of what he has and what he can do. And defensively, I want to see more of Solomon DeShields. He had a big sack on third down, really the last key third down for Western Michigan on Saturday night. It was a big play. I want to see more of him out there, not necessarily at the expense of Shane Simon, because Shane Simon needs as many reps as he can get too. But I feel like Solomon DeShields is scratching the surface of how good he can be, and I'm excited to see what happens when he really breaks through, which I think could happen maybe potentially in this game if he gets enough snaps and reps. Bam Brima's another guy. If you have some banged up defensive ends, Brima could eventually, could ultimately be like your fourth defensive end. If Deslin Alexander comes back and Haba Baldonado is back, but Deion Hayes is going to be out for a while, Bam Brima is going to be your fourth defensive end. I want to see what he can do and how he plays with more opportunities and getting more comfortable on the field. And then the backup safeties were the other guys that I mentioned on the Morning Pit today, where I think they, Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett are so solid. Brandon Hill and Eric Hallett are so reliable, and those guys are going to do what you need them to do. You can count on them. But if something happens to them, if you need somebody else to go in, I think you need to get more reps in this game for Judson Tallender and Javon McIntyre and PJ O'Brien. Maybe Khalil Anderson. Get those guys out there. Get them on the field. Let them make the calls and the checks, communicate, work on doing what they need to do to get the defense ready to go and to make plays in the defense. I think you need to get those guys on the field as well. I want to see those backup safeties. And then I want to see A.J. Woods get a pick six. Because, look, everybody else in the secondary has a pick six. Marquez Williams had one last week. MJ Devonshire had the one against West Virginia. Eric Hallett had the one in the ACC championship game. Brandon Hill had one against Florida State in 2020. Out of the guys who were in the regular rotation, and I guess you maybe could include Rashad Battle in that, but he's not playing as much as Woods. Out of those five guys who are in the regular rotation, Woods is really the only one without a pick six. And so he needs to join that club. And it'd be cool if he did it sooner rather than later. It'd be cool if he did it on Saturday, and then you could just cross that. You could close the circle on Pitt's defensive backs getting pick sixes. Listen, like I said earlier, you got to make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You'll know every time we put up a new video. When we put up a new morning pit, every morning, Monday through Friday, when we go live on Wednesday nights for the Panther-Lair Show, when we go live after the games for the Panther-Lair post game, you get a notification. You turn on notifications, and you'll get an alert sent to your phone so that you know we're going live, or we posted a new video, whether it's a morning pit video or a Pat Narduzzi Thursday press conference video or a coach's interview or a player interview. You'll know when we do it because you get a notification. So hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hit the like button on this video too. We appreciate that. And you can always make comments on the videos that we post. You want to have conversations about those, engagement, go back and forth. And then stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all the latest Pitt sports news. Football, basketball, and recruiting. All right there. Panther-Lair.com. We got a couple more morning pits to come out this week, Thursday and Friday editions. Thursday I'll have some recruiting rundown and recruiting information for you. Friday we'll have just kind of some final thoughts heading into the Rhode Island game, plus more games to watch around the coastal and around the country this weekend. So we've got a lot of stuff. Keep an eye out for those. Really appreciate everybody who's been watching the morning pit videos, listening to the podcast. That's awesome. Can't thank you enough. Keep it up. And and thanks for tuning in tonight for the Panther-Lair Show. It's always fun to do these. Get the chat screen going, get the chat section with the comments and the questions, a little engagement back and forth. It's always a lot of fun. So thank you very much for participating in that way. Thanks for watching the video or listening to the podcast, however you consume this content. We appreciate that as well. Have a great rest of the night, great rest of the week. We'll have a morning pit for you on Thursday, and then we'll have the post-game show after the Rhode Island game on Saturday. All right here on youtube.com.